Carlos.
Hello, everyone. Sorry, I was running a couple minutes behind.
No problem. And then students, while we wait to get started, if you've already completed the attendance survey, you can just put in the chat what your major is. I know we had a lot of ISM students join in on this event, but I think there are some other majors as well. So I'm curious to see what majors all of you are pursuing. Looks like we have a couple double majors. Great. A lot of ISM double majors. That's fantastic. All right, and then we will go ahead and get started right now. We're still waiting for one more panelist to join, but we'll have her jump in when she does. So as many of you know, my name is Kimberly Swisher. I'm a career advisor in the Career Planning and Placement Office. And I'm also joined today by Carlos Pierre, who's the director in the Career Planning and Placement Office. If you are just joining us, there is an attendance survey in the chat. I will go ahead and repost that. If you haven't already completed it, just make sure you do. That's how we track attendance for these events. The meeting today is being recorded, and so we'll send that out to all of you as long as you complete the chat to let us know that you've been here. For those of you, this may be your third ISM event that you've attended this semester. We did a 3-part series, so what is ISM, careers in ISM, and then wrapping it up with the job searching in ISM. So I want to say thank you to all of our panelists for joining us today and providing their insight and expertise. With that, I'm going to go ahead and have the panelists introduce themselves. So we will start with Martin.
Hello, everyone. My name is Martin Nelson. I am a data information specialist at Berkshire Production Supply LLC, and I just graduated from Wayne State with the ISM this year. So,
Great, thank you. And we will go next to Reese.
Awesome, thank you for having me. My name is Reese Hoppenstead. I work at HubSpot as a financial analyst. It's a company based in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Prior to HubSpot, I went to Boston College. I also recently graduated this spring, where I studied finance and what we have business analytics, which is essentially the same thing as the ISM major.
Thank you. And Justin.
Hey everybody, I'm an IT system engineer, currently based in Southfield. Graduated from Oakland University with a degree in ISM as well.
Okay, awesome. And then Nicole Middleton is our 4th in-person panelist today, and I know she will be joining us in just a couple of minutes. And then we also have a 5th panelist who couldn't be here today, but he did write out his answers to the questions that we would be asking. And his name is Fahad Nawar, and he recently worked at Bosch as an IT support analyst. And so Carlos Pierre is going to kind of be providing his answers to some of the questions because I think his insight was really beneficial and we want to make sure that all of you have access to that. So with that, and there was one question in the chat, when the meeting ends, where can I find the recording? So once you all fill out the attendance survey, we will email that recording out to you. It's not immediately going to be accessible everywhere, but in the next couple of days, you'll receive an email with that link. And in the meantime, if you have any questions about the event or something that was said, absolutely reach out to me directly. I'll also put my contact information in the chat. To the point of Fahad not being here today and Carlos moderating his answers, he did also provide his email address. So if you have questions about some of the things that Carlos says and we're not available to answer your questions, or some of the other panelists aren't available to answer your questions, you can absolutely reach out to Fahad directly, and you'll just want to reach out to me to get his contact information. Okay. So with that, we will go ahead and get started with the first question, and that is, describe your experience job searching up to this point. How did you get any past internships that you had? How did you get your current job? And we will start with Reese.
Yes, so I'm currently at HubSpot, like I mentioned, and actually before coming on full time, I interned there. So I've interned at HubSpot for 2 years prior to coming on full time. Over those full 2 years, I had like kind of all sorts of different rotations, I guess you could say, across the finance department. I worked within different groups in the finance department, all in data management style roles. First managing the back end data for all the commission statements for the sales reps and whatnot, and calculating that and making sure that was delivered properly to the end user. Then this past summer, kind of in the weeds on some capital expenditure projects and making sure there were no data discrepancies. So that was an interesting one. Spent a lot of time analyzing data in Excel. Those were the two internships. I've since transitioned into a full-time role as a financial analyst where I own a couple of our data systems where we hold our P&L data and some of our install-based data. So that's like how much any given annual recurring revenue we get paid at any given time as a subscription business has. So it's been interesting. It's been kind of all over the place. I've been moving around quite a good amount, but I've settled into this new role. I've been in this new role now for about 5 months, and it's a much more central role. So it's definitely been enjoyable.
Okay, awesome, thank you. And Martin, to you next. Can you talk a little bit about how you got your current position, what your experience has been job searching?
Sure. Well, I got my current position after COVID basically got me fired from the position I had prior. This position this was like a culmination of the last 3 years of me job searching, because this one kind of fell in my lap. The prior to this, it was a struggle. Like the first internship, I found jobs, but they weren't really what I wanted to do. So the first internship, I got lucky. I worked for a small firm called Safety Track, which basically sold cameras for your car. And, I got paid nothing, and I did a lot of work. And then after that, I got luck. I got picked up at Delphi Technology as a master data clerk internship. And, that job, I didn't even know what it was before I took it. I just kind of took it because I knew what Delphi was. And that's where I learned the most of any position I had while I was in college. Just the pace of professional workplace, expectations, and how to think critically. And then after that, I realized I wasn't going to get kept on because my boss was nice enough to tell me that. So I jumped ship and I went to this startup called Ground Speed Analytics. That place was a farm, if you guys know what I mean. Like everybody that was in there, we were just working hard every day, and it was rough, but I learned a lot. I learned a lot. Then COVID happened, and so they downsized, and I was let go. So I was looking for a job for about 4 months, and then at that point, I got lucky. Somebody called me from Berkshire, and I chased it down, and that's how I ended up where I'm at today.
Awesome, thank you. And we'll go to you next, Justin.
Yes, so the first position I had was an internship for an architecture firm, and the old saying of "it's not what you know, but who you know" really played true in that my sister was actually at the company and said, "Hey, there's this great internship opportunity. You should come out." And I did, and that kind of set me down my path. And then I would say, in the second position that I got, they actually ended up calling all of my references that I had listed on my resume. And because I had those references and those people to speak well about my skills and my abilities, I was able to get that job. And so that's where I am now.
Okay, awesome, thank you. And moving on to the next question. So from your perspective, for all of you, what's the job market like for students right now, particularly those that have an ISM degree? And then kind of how difficult was it for you to get your current job? And we will go first to Martin.
Well, I think the job market for ISM majors is great if you know how to search for a job. Um, just type in an ISM and search for that. Probably won't get it because it's like there's so many different terms you can use. I'm sure we'll get into that later. But it's difficult because the hardest, for me, the hardest thing was trying to figure out where I wanted to work, because ISM is this space between IT and business analyst. Like there's so many different roles you can take, and just figuring out what it is that you want to do is probably the hardest thing about it. And of course, you also have to get experience. So in that realm, you might have to take a job you don't want or isn't really what you want to do just to get some experience. So yeah.
Oh, great. Thank you. Next, I'll have Carlos share on behalf of Fahad.
Okay, thanks. And since he was not here to introduce himself, he was an ISM major at the Mike Ilitch School of Business. And he shared with us that he feels it's a broad, like ISM is so broad that there is definitely a market for it and always will be. One of the biggest keys is you will need to kind of have an idea of what you want to do within it. And he talked about the mixture of IT engineering, software engineering, like all these type of roles that you can get into with it. And he even mentioned about a product management position that he was interested in. And one of the things that he really highlighted, and I didn't speak on the first question, but was just making sure that like when you're in that job search that your resume is a good representation for you, as that's kind of the first thing that employers see. And he had talked about how he had worked with Kimberly and she had given him several back and forth like revisions to make and things like that, just making sure that you're putting your best foot forward. And the thing is to really identify those careers that you are interested in, and then pursuing them, knowing that you can tell your story and get experiences, get internships that will prepare you for those roles. He is currently at Bosch, and he had some previous experience at Denso, which both are automotive suppliers, two of the top automotive suppliers in the country. And setting yourself up with internships to kind of lead into that full-time opportunity is a definitely feather in your cap. So that was some of his strongest advice, but he sees a great job market. It's about you then networking and going after those positions.
Thanks. Thank you. And yeah, to tack on to that, I think for all of the students here, like the job market, well, yes, there are some challenges right now with COVID. The job market does look very good, particularly for those ISM students. And a lot of it is if you're having trouble in your job search and you're not having success in finding opportunities, then maybe you need to change how you're looking for positions. And so I would recommend to all of you, talk to the people around you to see maybe what you could be doing differently. Schedule an appointment with career planning and placement to get more guidance on how to job search effectively. Moving on to our next question. What are some of the main things students should be doing to make themselves a competitive applicant right now? And can you particularly suggest things not only within academics, but that they can be doing outside of academics to set themselves apart from other candidates? And we will start first with Justin.
Yeah, so one of the main things I think you could do on your cover letter, read that job description, throw in the points that are in that job description of, if we're talking about what type of servers that we're using or a different application that we use, if you have experience in that, definitely put that in the top of your cover letter. So that's going to want me to keep reading, read your resume, go to your LinkedIn, and go from there because I'm now engaged and I know that you have that relevant skill set.
Thank you. And next we will go to Reese. So what should students be doing right now to make themselves a competitive applicant, and what can they be doing outside of academics as well?
Yeah, so like with outside of academics, I think any kind of like my job, it's very analytical, very quant heavy. And I've had to pick up some like basic coding skills that I wasn't taught in college. Now, I don't know necessarily if it's in your curriculum, but like it's pretty basic, like the stuff I've had to learn for my job, but it was in R. Just as an example, it's a very statistical package and it's just a lot easier for handling data. I know there's a website called Code Academy, and like I've since spent like a lot of time on it. And there's free coding lessons and whatnot, and it kind of can help you just dabble a little bit. It just made kind of transitioning for me a little bit easier. It's one of those skills that can be a little tricky to pick up at the start, but I think that always helps. And then within academics, just continuing, like Justin said, to put down the buzzwords on your cover letters, and with the resumes, having a proper structure of the resume, like Carlos was referring to before. I think those are always, big parts. Having a good resume. I think if you can have a resume that reads top to bottom in 20 seconds, 30 seconds, and a recruiter can have something and take away like a point or two and know something cool about you, I think that's always a good thing. One thing I like, I don't know if you guys do it, I just have like interests on my resume too, and I always have them. They're completely different from like my professional or my academic career, and it just kind of shows another side of me. And I think that also helps make me like a little bit more personable. If it's just one piece of paper you get, it's hard. You really do have to do what you can to stand out.
Yeah, great point. Thank you, Reese. Next to you, Martin, what are some of the main things as a student they should be doing to set themselves apart from other candidates? And can you suggest things outside of academics that they can do as well?
Well, I think um, a point I would like to make is the jargon. Like anything at ISM, like whatever role you get, the people you're going to be working with are going to have so much domain knowledge that you're going to have to bridge that gap. And when you get in interviews, after they you get through the pleasantries, it's really about having a conversation with your future employer. And if you've been keeping up on some of the current events or some jargon, it really helps because now we're talking about the problems and issues that you're going to see in a daily work environment instead of just more hypothetical things. And that's one thing I would do. And other things students can do outside of academics, like the guy said, Code Academy, really solving problems on YouTube, Googling things, like, all those things come into so much play. Control V, Control C. You're going to be doing so many different things in your daily work that just having different ways to hotkey things and, being able to jump from different platforms comfortably, like those things will help you keep up with the professionals that have more domain knowledge than you, and have these conversations so that they feel certain that you know what you're talking about.
Oh, great, thank you, Martin. And I guess to chime in from the career planning and the placement side of things, Martin is absolutely correct in things that you learn outside of coursework. And I think oftentimes the mindset is when you go into an interview that you should be talking about what you've learned in your coursework, and you can absolutely do that. But if on the side you're independently teaching yourself new technical skills or you're troubleshooting on your own, you can absolutely also include that because it shows that you're committed to the field in your own time. You're doing essentially professional development, even if it's just finding free YouTube videos to watch and learn. So I think those are all really great points. Carlos, if you want to chime in there as well on that question.
Okay, yes. And so he mentioned that very important for him was making sure you knew about the companies that you were targeting and researching them. Doing your research and then also networking. So having a LinkedIn profile, which I couldn't have given a better answer. And when he talked about the LinkedIn profile and networking, as the LinkedIn is kind of an extension to your resume, only gives you a little bit more of a visual feel for you, and you get to do some more explaining of things and have paragraphs and things like that that Kimberly or I or my staff will yell at you for if you had it on the resume, but you can do that within LinkedIn. So first, making sure that you have a good LinkedIn profile, and then you use it to actively network. He mentioned seeking out connections at companies where he was interested in to connect with them, and you start off with a kind of, I want to learn from you. He mentioned, and I will definitely echo, you don't reach out to someone on LinkedIn and say, hey, do you have a job? But it's all about building that relationship, because if I'm just meeting you, you reach out to me on LinkedIn and say, hey, do you have a job? I don't know who you are. So I'm gonna say no, but you reach out to them, you ask for advice, you network, you establish the relationship, and then the goal is either the job comes later with them, or maybe they're not in a position to hire, but they can refer you on to someone else. And then he also mentioned, he mentioned really making sure that something that was very important for him was in the interview process, he got asked the question at Bosch, why do you want to work for Bosch? Which is one of those questions that I know when I do mock interviews with students, I always ask them that, because you have to have a compelling story for why do you want to work at a particular company. And it's not about you telling the company how great they are and all of that, but it's about what is your fit with the company. And he mentioned that Bosch being the #1 automotive supplier company, and he did his research to know that they had introduced something called CAN technology, or CAN communication, which was a groundbreaker in the automotive supply technology industry, and that they were impressed that he knew that and was interested in that. And he got an offer the same day that he interviewed with them. So just making sure you do that. He also mentioned a site he used to do a little more research and that had some kind of free hands-on training called Guru 99. I will throw that in the chat here when I get done speaking with you. But he said utilizing like resources such as that to kind of help prepare you, in addition to what you learn, as has been mentioned, outside the classroom, to help prepare you.
Awesome. Thank you, Carlos. And then I am going to kind of pause here, and we're going to have Nicole Middleton introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Nicole Middleton.
Oh, Nicole, it's pretty hard to hear you.
Is that better?
No.
How about now?
Still really quiet.
And while you're waiting, I just threw it in the chat for that website that was mentioned.
I can give you a second to troubleshoot if you want, and then we can come back.
Let's see.
Oh, that's much better.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Everyone,
terrible.
thumbs up
My
all around.
headphones are making me terrible. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure. So my name is Nicole Middleton. I actually just switched roles about a week and a half ago. So my current role is actually an application support analyst at United Wholesale, but previously I was a business system analyst at a company called the Chemical Group. I did major in ISM in undergrad, and as far as internships, I interned across 3 different companies: Blue Cross, Quicken Loans and a sister company called Detroit Labs. So it's been an interesting journey so far.
Awesome. And then we're going to go back a little bit and have Nicole answer some of the questions that we had gone over. So if you can start, Nicole, by just talking a little bit about your job search experience up to this point. You started a new position, so I think it's very relevant for you. But just kind of what was the process? How did you secure your internships? How did you just secure your jobs?
Sure. So how I secured my internships, definitely through a lot of help with career planning and placement. I think everyone became, Carlos is laughing because he knows it's true. I think everyone kind of knew my name and face, around the time that I was really looking to intern. And in addition to that, they at least had an idea of my major and interest. So if there was things that I didn't know about or opportunities that I didn't know of, I would literally get emails and saying, hey, did you look into this opportunity? I know this is your major, make yourself available. So definitely help from career planning and placement, as well as networking. So spending those times that I had free between classes to go to different events that was being held in the business school. And especially that and going to career fairs starting out in my freshman year. And I would say doing that allows you to become familiar with the companies, especially if they're companies that recruit, either each semester or, if they're consistently at career fairs. So a lot of networking and a lot of reflection in terms of figuring out what I wanted to do with my major. I would say was really helpful in securing the internships. In terms of my positions, getting more experience throughout each internship and having a idea at the end of each one of, okay, well, what do I want to do next and what have I learned? Taking that information, reflecting and saying, okay, I'm looking for this analyst type of role, doing a lot of research between LinkedIn and just all of the companies that I knew that were recruiting for my major. And again, keeping up with that network to see, when certain companies were offering internships versus full-time. Definitely. But as far as the first role, my first actual role at Ally Financial, a big help was due to my corporate mentor that I had through the corporate mentorship program with Wayne State. So I actually had the opportunity to work under my boss. That's my first job in IT.
That's awesome. Thank you. And then we'll have you answer the next question as well. So from your perspective, what does the job market look like right now for ISM students?
If I'm being honest, it's competitive. It is competitive. And I would say not just within your own school, but across different schools in different states. I would say the information system program is different per university, and some programs are more technical and some are more focused on the business side. So I would say it's definitely competitive, and what you can do to position yourself in the best way is really begin to reflect and figure out what courses that you're taking and see how those courses align to industry jobs, industry internships, and industry skill sets. Reflect again and see how you kind of rank yourself or align with those skill sets. So you can begin to gather a picture of maybe the type of internship you want per industry or the type of job that you're looking for in terms of those skill sets.
Okay, great. And last question, then we'll go back to the whole group. What are the main things that these students should be doing to make themselves a competitive applicant? And I know you just kind of mentioned there one thing, but I'm wondering other things outside of academics that you would suggest them to do.
Sure. So definitely keep your LinkedIn profile up to date. I would say it's changed quite a bit since I was an undergrad, where it's become more collaborative, and your online presence on LinkedIn is actually, it goes a long way. So spending some time to make sure that your profile is as up to date as possible so that you can actually network virtually. That is a thing, and I've definitely stand behind networking virtually via LinkedIn. So making sure your LinkedIn profile is up to date, as well as, again, figuring out your skill sets, figuring out if there's outside things that you can create that you can probably bring to that interview. If you're definitely in ISM, if you are looking for something more technical or dealing with data, having the GitHub account is still applies. Even if you're not looking to be like a pure developer, but still, if there's something that you can show to say that you know certain concepts, like let's say if you're looking for like a BA type of role, it pays to still be able to show the concepts that you know, because it shows that you can communicate that information effectively. So if you can have time to set up maybe like a GitHub profile, do that. If you're like in marketing and you need like a portfolio that you if you can create a portfolio, do so. Some type of visual aid to further explain what concepts that you've learned goes a long way.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, moving on to our next question, and I'll pose this to the whole group. What role did networking play in your job or internship search? And we'll start with you, Justin.
Yeah, so I think networking is a big deal nowadays, especially with LinkedIn, right? So, when you're going on those job searches in LinkedIn, it shows you, do you know somebody at this company who so I'll be searching through jobs. I'm like, wow, I didn't realize I know 3 people who work there. I can reach out to them now and say, hey, I saw that you guys have this open opportunity. I have my foot in the door already. And that's a great way to get in.
Awesome, thank you. And I'll actually refer to something you said earlier as well, that your first internship you actually got through a family member. Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct.
So I think students, it's not necessarily just, I think oftentimes when you think about networking, you're kind of starting from scratch, but look to your friends, look to your family members, see what connections they have, because that's a great place to start, and then you can grow your networking connections from there. And then Carlos, I will have you answer on behalf of Bahad next.
Okay, thanks. And I will add to something that Justin just mentioned. Something I tell students a lot of times, if you are, well, during normal times, especially like if you're going home for a break or things like that, and students, like you get the neighbors asking you, hey, how's college going? Or how's this and that going? And you look at your neighbor as the electrician and you don't really give them details. So they have no idea really what you're doing, but you don't know who your neighbor knows. So so if you're sharing, I'm an ISM major, looking for these opportunities, and I am seeking, because sometimes students are ashamed to say that I don't have an internship or things like that. You don't know who your neighbor knows. So even though you see them as Bob, the electrician, or Sally, the nurse, or what have you, as the more you're giving them information about, yeah, here's what I'm looking for, you don't know that they might say, oh, that sounds like what my cousin Susie does. I should connect you to. So this networking thing is huge and very important. So, all right, off my soapbox and back on to Vaad. He mentioned that, I mentioned a little bit about his LinkedIn earlier, or in the previous question. He mentioned that he used that and would get these notifications of, people at the company that had looked at his profile and things like that. And depending on what level of access you have to LinkedIn or whatever, if you go premium, you might be able to see the names, and reached out to people like that. He also college professors as a nice resource in that, reaching out to, so some like a Professor Heinrichs on this call and say, hey, do you know anybody in this area? And you'd be surprised, I'm not surprised, but you'd be surprised how many contacts someone, Norman, who's on the call as well, Professor Lewis, has in the industry, and how they might be able to connect you. So I will add to, Fahad didn't say this, but I will add to that, when you're in classes, Don't just be the person who doesn't participate. Like don't just be there, but be engaged, because the more you're engaged, the more a professor will get to know you as well. And then you become a part of that professor's network. So use all the resources that you have at your disposal.
Awesome. Thank you, Carlos. Martin, we'll go to you next. What role did networking play in your job search?
I would say it's a big role, but not in like traditional sense. Every job I got, the before I got hired, they looked at my LinkedIn page. And so I thank Wayne State for doing that, because I didn't think it was a big deal. But looking back upon it, like every hiring manager, they looked at my LinkedIn page, and then I got the job. And as it goes with networking through LinkedIn, I didn't know a lot of people in the industry. So what I chose to do is I just typed in recruiter or technical recruiter or different variations of that into LinkedIn. And I found, like 500 different recruiters in the metropolitan area and just reached out to them. And most of them, they accepted the chat or whatever. So through that, like now, since I've graduated, every day I'll get an offer, some position from a technical recruiter trying to fill a position. So like that's a big deal. It took a little while to snowball, but if I want to find another job, I already have like 3 or 4 leads right there. So
Awesome. Thank you. And Nicole, we'll go to you next. I know you mentioned a little bit in your previous answer, but what role did networking play for you?
A major part. I would not be where I am right now without the network I have, and then continuing to build. So kind of just to highlight a little bit of my journey and how I've secured roles. I kind of mentioned this in the last event, but when it came to my internships, out of the 3, I was only officially offered 1. The other 2 came from me networking in the summer research program, which caused me to interact with the director 2 of my department, who graciously extended me 2 internships. And that was just all because he was really impressed with the amount of research that I was doing, in addition to my internship workload. And I had expressed some possible interest in certain roles with the company. So again, a major role. And when it came to the internship at Quicken, I networked with the recruiter for an entire year. And it wasn't until the 3rd round of Quicken going through internships and coming back and saying, hey, we actually didn't fill any summer BA internships. We now have this budget. And the recruiter contacted me, explained this to me, and offered me an interview. So again, it was literally keeping up with this recruiter for a whole year, like seeing him at 2 of the career fairs, looking through roles, emailing him and saying, hey, I think this is a fit. Can I, apply, and we see where this goes. And then throughout those conversations, him getting a sense of my major and what I was interested in. When that BA internship came around, I mean, he already knew that was what I was interested in, and I was interested in more of the technical side of the BA role. So again, through networking and relationship building for sure.
Awesome.
And even, I will say, even with this recent switch with me leaving my last position, the day I left the position was the same day I accepted a new offer. And that only happened, again, networking with the recruiter and explaining, hey, this is where I am in my current journey. I was looking for something that allowed me to give me a real solid foundation in the data space. The role that I interviewed for, I actually didn't get, but the team lead of the team referred me to another position that wasn't even posted yet. They had to get the budget for that actual role. And again, it was through networking, being consistent, and expressing your interest, which was the only reason that opportunity even occurred. So it is a major part for me. Major part.
If I could add something really quickly, because I thought about as Nicole was speaking, oh, come on, Nicole. This networking process is not one of these immediate gains. You don't know when it's going to benefit you. It could be well down the line, but still don't think, hey, I'm going to network and then get a job offer tomorrow. No, that's not what this is about. It's about that longer term goal of when that opportunity comes available, is what happened with Nicole. Them knowing you, knowing who you are, and reaching out to you versus you having to reach out to them.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Carlos. And then Reese, we will wrap it up with you.
Kimberly, I would just say, can you let me, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Norman.
It never stops, the networking. Even as you go through your career, you should join organizations that enable you to keep networking so that you can expand your knowledge and learn more about what's hot, what's new, and what's worth doing. It particularly with there's a woman in technology group in Michigan that are very active and very enthusiastic. I happen to be a member of them. I just have to disguise myself.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. Networking is something, again, there's longevity that comes along with it, and that's how you reap that benefit, but it's something that has to continue to happen through the years. And Reese, we will turn it over to you.
Yes, I also agree with everything that's been said. Networking has been huge. It's been huge for me. It's how I got my first internship. Growing up, I worked on fishing boats. I was like a fishing mate. And like, I met one guy one day down on the dock, and like, he knew a guy at a company, and we started talking, and he went to the same school as I did, and kind of just started going from there. Helped me get the foot in the door, get that initial contact with the recruiter, and then it was kind of on me from there, staying up with them, helping to find right spot in the company. Kind of like Nicole said, the first spot that they tried to put me was not the proper fit. Took a little bit of time. I had all sorts of interviews and whatnot, but it was nice just being able to have that network that at least helped me open that door to begin with. Then on the LinkedIn front, that's been huge. So during the 2 internships, I also was searching for other full-time opportunities, not just at the company HubSpot, in other companies and whatnot. And that was all pretty much done through LinkedIn and career fairs. I know it's hard, like in this COVID world, to have like a career fair or anything like that. So just coming to events like these, like, I think this is great. Like, this is a start. This is networking, essentially. Like, it is. You're building connections here. You're learning, hearing from other people. I enjoy it. I think what Norman said is interesting too, like professional groups continuing throughout your entire career, always learning from other people. Once you're in the industry, like, I would love to learn from people in different cities who have slightly different roles from me. It'd be cool just learning different perspectives, always learning, trying to get better.
Awesome, thank you. So moving on now to the next question. Should I include projects on my resume or put together a portfolio of my work? And we will go first to Carlos, speaking for Fahad.
Okay, thanks. Fahad mentioned, number 1, talking with career planning and placement. So, and I'm not making this up, he did literally say that, in terms of get that feedback, because it can vary. But one of the things that he mentioned was that he did put together a PowerPoint of some of the projects and things like that to kind of have a nice summary, and then asked various recruiters, was it okay for him to show them this PowerPoint, because he didn't want to overwhelm them, but he did want to show what he could do. So if you can, so sometimes it might get a little bit lost on a resume, but just thinking outside the box and things like, all right, I'll create this PowerPoint, and as I'm networking or interviewing, I can share these things that I've done. So having a nice summary of the project that you've done, because the challenge with the resume can be you can go into too much detail and lose specific readers. So this kind of broader view of what you've done, put it together, formalize it, and then ask, hey, can I share this with you?
Awesome, thank you. Next, we will go to Martin. Should students include projects on their resume? Should they have a portfolio of their work?
Just like Carlos said, it's very dependent. I think if you apply for a job that has something that you have relevant experience in, then you may want to include the portfolio maybe with your cover letter or something like that, so that the hiring manager has a reference to see your work. Case in point, this last job that I got, the only reason why I got it is because I had put on my resume experience with Microsoft Access, and like that alone drove the conversation to a different place, and I think that's the main reason I got it. If I had put that on my resume, maybe I would have got more hits from that, like my projects and stuff. So I think it varies, but if you have if you apply and they say, do you know Python, then you should definitely, maybe put your GitHub or Python or something on there, and then they can look at that at their own leisure and kind of let you know what they think.
Thank you. Justin, we will go to you next.
Yeah, I think projects are a great way to show what you can do, especially if you don't have all of the experience yet. I know a lot of people will look at experience in lieu of years of experience, or projects in lieu of experience on your resume that you might be lacking. And like Nicole said, that GitHub can be a great way, even if it's not a work-related project, even if it's a personal project, something that you just worked on in your house and you had fun with. It shows that you're engaged and you really like what you want to do or can do for them. So it's a great idea.
Reese.
Yeah, kind of just piggybacking off of everything that everyone else said. I don't know how it would hurt unless it was like an extremely cumbersome document with an obsessive amount of pages. I don't know how having any sort of portfolio would hurt. I had a portfolio of all sorts of work, like across different classes and whatnot, and it wasn't always necessarily just solo work. Like if there were group projects that I thought were cool, or anything where I thought we might have come up with a cool insight or used different, method that might not be typically applied there, might as well throw it in. I just think, like everyone else is saying, it shows that you're involved, engaged, and you really do want to do what you're saying you want to do.
Awesome, thank you. And then Nicole, anything you'd like to add there?
Sure. So from kind of my side of ISM, like dealing with like BA roles and some technical roles, it is beneficial to have a GitHub. In addition to that, there are spots on LinkedIn where you can link certain projects. So they'll let you like embed like a URL to certain projects. As I'm getting into the data space, it's kind of more important because you can kind of showcase the tool sets that you use and also the concepts. So for example, if I'm using like a business intelligence tool, a question would be like, do you know DAX formulas? What tools have you used? What reports have you created? What formats have you worked in? Because one of the tools actually has a really in-depth like format visualization aspect to the tool. So it is kind of important to somehow visually show those type of concepts.
Awesome, thank you. We have 2 more questions and then we'll move on to an open Q&A. So students, start generating your questions now. Feel free to put them in the chat and we can refer back to them. A student also asked if Norman could drop the link in the chat regarding the Michigan Council for Women in Technology. I went ahead and put the link to their website and then Norman gave a brief description. So feel free to refer to that if you're interested in learning more.
Oh, yeah,
And then,
great. Yeah.
And then there's also an attendance survey. So I know many of you kind of joined after I announced this. If you've already filled it out, you don't need to fill it out again. But I just threw that link in the chat, so please be sure you take that. That's how we get accurate attendance for these events, and hopefully high attendance will result in us planning similar events in the future. Okay, moving on to the next question. I think this one is really interesting. What is one thing you wish you would have done differently in your job search? And we will start first with Reese.
I kind of touched upon this earlier, but I mentioned a little bit of code. I wish I had kind of taken the initiative a little bit beforehand and learned that kind of before going into the job search. I think it probably would have opened up some other doors that I may have closed off. Nicole's mentioned that has maybe a more technical side role dealing with business analysts. Like as a financial analyst, I'd say I'm a lot like quantitative, but I'm not really necessarily writing a lot of code to analyze data. Like I'm just kind of performing a lot of math and whatnot. So I think if I had a little code beforehand, I think that would have been good, especially for like the kind of business analytics style and business analyst roles. I think that would be definitely something I would go back and change. But you know, you can pick it up at any time. It didn't really hurt me in the long run. So.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Nicole, we'll go to you next. What's one thing you wish you would have done differently in your job search?
So I'm actually going to say nothing because the process to understand what I did know and what I didn't know would not have happened had I done it this way. Definitely you will see job descriptions where it may not be as technical, and then you get to the interview, then it's more technical. There's been interviews where I've, especially now being in the data space, I've learned so much more about the interviews I didn't get versus the jobs or second interviews that I didn't get as opposed to the ones that I did get. And it's given me just kind of a foundation of knowledge of where I need to look for information and where I need to focus my attention. So I would say nothing.
No, that's great. Martin, to you next.
I would say just being open to different positions, because one thing I've learned is like there's like kind of like two sides. There's like companies that are really tech forward, like HubSpot. Like people have heard of that. They're gonna have a lot of well thought out job descriptions that accurately tell you what you're gonna be doing. Whereas like more of like these more legacy companies, a lot of those positions they're not gonna they may be heavy tech, but they may not really say that in the job description. And so you kind of need to be able to read between the lines and say, okay, maybe this isn't an analyst role, but it is an analyst role, you know? And so like just being open to different positions that don't necessarily have the hard title that you may be looking for, but actually do the work that you want to do is something I would change.
That's awesome. Yeah, really good point there. Justin, we'll go to you next.
Yeah, I think one of the main things I would do differently is go to career fairs. I don't think I really utilized that when I was in university, and that opportunity really isn't available to me now. It's great that you guys are all here doing these panels, and you can reach out to us on LinkedIn and connect and create those networking opportunities that I just didn't take advantage of, and I really wish I had.
Awesome. And I will, in line with that, say I didn't tell any of the panelists what to say today. And so I know you hear the career planning and placement in your faculty all the time harp on going to the career fairs and the importance of networking. But you're hearing from professionals that it really is important. So hopefully, if what we say doesn't resonate with you, hopefully some of the feedback from the panelists is resonating. And then I'll wrap it up with you, Carlos, on this question. One thing Fahad would have done differently in his job search.
Yes, and that's perfect that you just said that, because, well, first he mentioned that what he would have done differently is had realized the importance of your resume a little bit earlier. And I mentioned the back and forth that he had with Kimberly before, but just getting that together, and he didn't realize it, he said, until they took BA 1000. But then he also mentioned having a conversation with Kimberly. He wasn't going to accept the Bosch position. So primarily because he was worried. It's in Bosch's, or I think he was, or it's in Troy or Plymouth, one of them. But I think he's in Plymouth. But he didn't want to have to drive in the winter, and it's one of those things where, okay, it's not that far. If you were in LA or Chicago or Atlanta or a city like that, where like that would be a small commute compared to what you have to do in some of those cities. So doing everything that you can to get the experiences and that you can have. And so he mentioned, yeah, go talk to career planning placement. So I'm not making this up either. And he gave lots of shout outs to Kimberly, who does a phenomenal job in the career planning placement office. But just doing whatever it takes, like be passionate about the opportunities that you are pursuing, and because that shows up, and employers see that. And if it's a tiebreaker, I got you two relatively equal. I'm going with the person who is very passionate and doing those extra things. So just keeping that in mind. But yeah, so he definitely wish he had recognized the importance of the resume a little bit earlier.
Awesome, thank you. And then the last question, what are some keywords that I should use in my job or internship search when I start looking for positions? And we're just gonna have Nicole, Justin, and Martin respond to this. So Nicole, if you wanna kick it off.
Sure. So you said what keywords would
Yeah, like what keyword should a student use in their job search or internship search when they start looking for positions?
Sure. So that answer comes with a little homework from the student. Again, back to that reflection. So understanding those keywords is going to cause them to take time to actually reflect and see what aspect of ISM that they're truly interested in. That is going to guide the type of roles that they're looking for, and also like the technologies and skill sets needed. So as soon as they can kind of figure that out, so in my area, it would be a lot of data analytics terms. So if I'm using like a business intelligence tool, it would be like Power BI, Tableau, DAX formulas, definitely SQL, databases, relational databases, databases that are used more in a technical space, because there are some that are more used in a bigger corporate environment versus like a smaller tech company. So that actually makes a difference. Project management stuff. So like including project management, maybe definitely like Agile, Scrum, some project management tools like Confluence and Jira, which really makes sense and really makes a difference in the software development space. So in my area, those would be a few.
Awesome, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Justin, to you next, some keywords that you'd use in your job search.
Yeah, so I think Nicole is pretty right on that, and that you're gonna have to look at, what you want to go into. So think that I look at, server 2019 or DHCP, DNS, networking terms, all those sorts of things. So a good idea would be, go to a website and look up ISM careers and look at all the different titles and research those titles and see what they do, what they include. And if you like those, then you start looking at the jargon for those terms and you search those terms, and that'll help to narrow down what you can get into.
Yeah, that's awesome. Great idea. And Martin, we'll wrap it up with you. Some keywords that you would use in a job search.
Well, this is the bane of my existence for the last 3 years, is searching for a job. So I got super technical with it. Like every day I kind of planned on applying to 5 different jobs. And through doing that, like I would go to Indeed and I would type in data, and then I would look at all the different data jobs. And from those data jobs, I would take different aliases for the same name of data. So then, I found master data. Then from that, I looked at clerk positions just to see what type of clerk positions there were that were related to data. And after you do that for a while, you'll figure out what it is you're interested in, and you can make your own database of different different search terms that you think are going to find the job that you want. And at that point, you know, just keep on trying different different job searching engines, and you know, just make it work. But yeah, like one of the main things that kind of opened a different door was clerk, you know, just clerk positions, because like you may not think that that's a data job, but it is. So
Awesome. Thank you. And right on cue, we're at 6 o'clock, so we're going to open it up for the general Q&A portion. And there's already quite a few questions in the chat, so I'm just going to pose it. And panelists, if any of you want to jump in and respond, please feel free to do so.
Okay, and Kimberly, really quickly,
Yeah.
like just based on what Martin just said, we have an ISM career guide on our website that can give you some of the position titles and some companies that hire and things like that. So you know, I'll try to go back in and throw it in the chat box, but just to kind of give you a feel for some of those things that you could be searching for.
Awesome. Thank you. One student asked, are there specific code languages that you think are more beneficial to learn for ISM positions? And I know, Nicole, you responded in the chat, but if you want to, feel free to just kind of share aloud.
Sure. So again, it's going to depend on the specific area. If they're looking for something that has to deal with anything with analysis or data, I would say a good foundation would be SQL. And I mentioned as well, if the option is available to take the database course with Mr. Lee, it's beneficial because he covers SQL from a data science perspective, and it causes the student to review a lot of concepts that are literally basic level, in-depth questions during the interview. I cannot tell you how much that class has saved me in the interview. I'm like, oh, goodness. Like I literally still have the syllabus and I still have my notes. So yeah, if any foundation into data, I would say SQL is a way to start. If you have a clue that you want to look more into business intelligence, SQL for sure, but as well as getting familiar with the common tools. And with Power BI, the use of DAX formulas for sure. Questions will come up, functions will come up. Yeah, for sure. And let's see, what's another area? If you're looking into the ERP space, definitely if you're looking more on the developer side, Java would be a good object-oriented programming language depending on the type of ERP that you're looking for. Like if you want to focus on SAP, learning Java will help with the concepts for the programming languages, the programming language used to develop SAP, which is called ABAP. Typically, you won't learn that additional material maybe on a post-undergrad level, but at least concept-wise, Java is the most relatable language to developing ERP systems.
Yeah. No, that's great.
All I have.
Great detail. Anybody else want to give their feedback on that same question? Which programming languages do you think are helpful? I think Nicole gave a pretty well thought out answer, but.
I would just agree that SQL is a big deal.
SQL is very large. All of our databases are designed in SQL, so I got SQL querying pretty much all day. It's really big.
No, that's awesome. And actually the other career advisor in my office posted in the chat that as a student, you have access to Power BI through Wayne State, the Microsoft 360 subscription. So that may be something for all of you to look into. Again, even if you're not using it in your coursework, you can absolutely learn it in your own time, add it to your resume, and talk about something you've done as professional development. And that would bode very well in an interview.
The object-oriented languages are clearly very important. The SQL, I think you can't live without it anymore. I've been R, which is, I took a course on that earlier in the year because I was not familiar with it. it's tremendously impressive what you can do with that statistical language. And if you're anywhere in the analysis business, which has become very popular, as Nicole pointed out, working with data, R is absolutely fantastic. But the trouble with this is that there are too many choices, aren't there? You have
Yeah.
to. And Nicole made a point about what you care about. You have to look at and say, where do I want to be busy? And then, like as you say, the ERP space, if you want to get into that space, then there's a bunch of stuff you have to do. You have to pick up. You have to, and since SAP are so big there, you have to know them.
No, that's awesome. Thank you, Norman.
Can I add a little bit in regards to R and Python? If I know there was an undergrad course, I think in R, like right before I left. In addition to that, if you can really understand key concepts from both stats courses, more so the second one in how to apply linear regression, you will have a good start as like a junior data analyst, depending on the company. If you can understand how that relates, you really have a good start. I will say many of these companies are becoming more data driven in their products and how they calculate pricing, and just parameters are really based on a lot of the statistical packages, and the foundational questions that they will ask are surrounding linear regression. That's literally the start.
No, that's awesome. Thank you.
That's a really good point, because a lot of AI is just linear regression, dressed up to look smart, but it's actually linear regression.
We had another question that got asked in the chat earlier. How often, I think the question was, how often do employers check references? So I can chime in on this, and then if any of the other panelists want to as well. You should always expect that an employer is going to check your references. In most cases, they will. And so do not put references down who you don't feel like will be a good reference for you. But the other thing you want to keep in mind is it doesn't look good if you put a reference down and they get a call and they have no idea that you're looking for a job right now. So you want to make sure that if you're putting individuals down on a reference page, that you've checked with the reference to make sure they're willing to serve as a reference for you and to give them a heads up. But you also want to keep in mind, you want them to say positive things about you. So hopefully that reference is someone who's had a positive experience with you and can speak to your skills, your abilities, your academic performance, or your work experience. There are a number of different things, but they should be able to say good things about you to that individual. But I would always, to the initial question, expect that those references will be contacted. And I don't know if anyone else would like to chime in on that. Carlos?
No, I think you did a great job explaining that. I think it might be less of a case if you have a better relationship with them, but even still, they might at least check at least one of them. So definitely alert people that you're going to use as a reference, that you're going to use them as a reference. And it helps to send them an updated copy of your resume so that they can see what you have been doing since they might have last interacted with you.
Any other questions from students? I think we hit all of the questions in the chat. If you have a question, feel free to type it in the chat or unmute yourself.
I had a question.
Yeah.
It's me, Julie. I was wondering if any of you guys got any certificates. I've been reading a lot about certificates in certain languages and stuff like that. So I was wondering if you guys got any of those or recommend any.
I'll start us off. I have never gotten a certificate, but like the practical knowledge, most of these
Yeah.
positions, they're going to be able to find that out extremely quickly.
Okay.
So I don't. It really depends on whoever is hiring and their preference. But as long as you know what you're doing, like you shouldn't really you won't need a certificate, but it doesn't hurt to have one. But
Okay. Thank you.
Quickly piggybacking on that, in like regards to HubSpot, it's a big tech company. We
Mm-hmm.
offer like a software. So I technically have a certificate like in our software. And I did that before applying and while I was kind of going through the application and recruiting process, just
Yeah.
so I knew more about the company. And that's kind of what everybody was saying earlier. It's just staying engaged with the company, knowing as much as you can and being as prepared as I can. Like it's part of the business that I don't really touch. Like I don't really use the software at all. Honestly, it was 2 years ago I was certified. I don't really know what it does today, and I don't really know how to use it. It's grown so much. But
Yep.
like I think at a point, like when you're trying to get the job, like if there's something that the company offers, like maybe you should be certified by that. Just
Okay.
show more, engagement with whatever firm it is.
I guess I was asking because I don't have experience, so would the certificate help me land the job?
What
Since
area of ISM are you in? Maybe that's a better.
I'm not quite sure yet. I haven't decided, so I'm trying to
Okay.
figure that out. But
Gotcha.
no.
Yeah, if you don't have the experience, the certificate's going to get you one past HR. So
Okay.
Yeah,
that's your big
exactly.
door, right? So if you can get those keywords on your resume that I'm certified in Python, right? Then there's like, okay, pass it right along because they're certified in Python and nobody else on my desk is. So it's definitely a huge help if you can do it.
Yeah.
So I would advise that.
I want to say even if you can't get the certification like in that specific area, if you can show like a lot of people will like display certain like badges or levels that they have on certain like learning systems. So I think on Udemy maybe there's like certain like skill levels that you can get. It at least will show like, hey, I know this amount of concepts and I've taken some type of assessment to confirm that I've taken or that I've been introduced to this type of concept. So I think that's another creative way if you can't just do a full-on certification.
Yeah, LinkedIn actually has all of those
Yeah, they
badges
do.
that you can do,
The
and
LinkedIn
they're just
courses.
quick 15-minute tests that anybody can do really fast. So
Oh, okay. Thanks.
Yep. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead. I was just going to chime in on what the panelists said. Certainly, as they mentioned, if you don't have any experience and you're having trouble in the job search, a certification is going to help you. It's going to help you get your foot in the door. But as you become employed by companies, keep in mind that a lot of companies will also pay for the certifications, and that's something I think oftentimes when students start a position, you feel very secured in your job and you're not really thinking about a next step. Even if you plan to be at that company for 5 years, if they're willing to pay for a number of different certifications, that's absolutely something you should take advantage of.
Definitely. I was gonna give a little bit of a different take. So in the aspect of enterprise systems, it's it's a niche area. So in regards to specifically SAP, there are like certifications that you can kind of get in like certain modules. And typically, for example, I attend Central. So before it was in their curriculum that you were required to pass the TERP 10 exam. And of course, that would be like your entry stamp of approval to say, hey, I know these certain modules to an extent. Now that is just optional, but you can still get a portion of that exam paid for. And so it's still recognized where employers know, hey, you know these specific modules and you know these certain concepts. So it still bears some weight for companies that have like that TERP 10 exam as like a preferred requirement. For a bigger company like Lilly, the certification is not necessarily required, because you're also going to learn how that specific company uses SAP. So they actually do a lot of like entry coursework that will kind of get you engaged and allow you to see how that specific company uses SAP. So in that area, I think it's really company specific. But again, if the university is paying for it, take it.
No, that's awesome. Great advice. Any other questions? I think we hit all of them in the chat. So if there are no more questions, we will go ahead and end this third event in our 3-part series. I want to take the time to thank all of our panelists for being here. You guys were fantastic and provided a lot of wonderful insight. So I want to thank all of you for that. Students, if you haven't already, just make sure you take that attendance survey. The recording of this video will be emailed out after the event. So watch for that as well. And everybody have a great evening.